Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you today you didn't show up here by accident. This is not just another day, this is a divine appointment. I believe God is up to something in your life. You may not see it yet, you may not feel it, but God is releasing unexpected blessings right now behind the scenes. He's working in ways you can't imagine. Doors you didn't knock on are about to open. Prayers you whispered in the dark are being answered in the light. The delays, the detours, the disappointments, God is going to use every bit of it to set you up for something greater. So I encourage you, don't give up. Don't let go and don't shrink back, because what's coming is better than what's been. Get ready. God is releasing favor, healing opportunities, and breakthroughs in ways that will surprise you. Sometimes in life, it can feel like nothing is happening. You've prayed, you've believed, you've waited, and yet it seems like the situation hasn't changed. The door hasn't opened, the healing hasn't come, the breakthrough hasn't arrived. It's easy to think that God has forgotten about you, or that maybe He's not listening. But let me remind you today, God is always working behind the scenes, even when you don't see it. Just because you can't see progress doesn't mean God isn't moving. Just because it feels silent doesn't mean God is inactive. He's the master planner, and He's arranging the details of your life in a way that only He can. Think about a seed planted in the soil. You don't see anything at first. It's buried, hidden from view. But just because it's hidden doesn't mean it's dead. That seed is growing roots, drawing in nutrients, getting stronger beneath the surface. Eventually it breaks through and starts to grow, but all that development was happening underground. That's how God often works in our lives. You don't see the progress, you don't feel the change. But under the surface, God is putting everything in place. He's aligning the right people, creating the right timing, building your character, preparing the environment. It's hidden, but it's happening. God is strategic. He knows the exact moment when to reveal His blessings. If He showed you too soon, you might not be ready. If He brought the opportunity before you develop the wisdom or strength to handle it, it could overwhelm you. So He takes His time, not because He's forgotten you, but because He loves you too much to give you something unprepared. That closed door wasn't rejection, it was protection. That delay wasn't a denial, it was preparation. When you're walking through a season of waiting, it's important to remember that God sees what you cannot see. He sees the future. He sees the people who are plotting against you, the traps the enemy has laid, and the distractions meant to derail you. And so He guides you in ways that may not make sense to your natural mind. You may feel like nothing is changing, but God is shifting things in your favor. He's moving hearts, softening circumstances, and rearranging situations. Just because it doesn't show up on your calendar doesn't mean it's not marked on God's. He's not bound by our timeline. He doesn't need everything to look perfect on the outside before He acts. Often His greatest work is done in the unseen. The Israelites were trapped between Pharaoh's army and the Red Sea, and it looked like there was no way out. But what they didn't know was that God was already working behind the scenes. He was about to part the waters, something they never could have imagined. That miracle was already in motion. In the same way, your Red Sea moment could be closer than you think. You might be standing there thinking all hope is lost, but God has already set things in place to open a path for you. God sees every tear you've cried. He hears every whispered prayer. He knows every sleepless night and every silent disappointment, and He's using it all. He's not wasting anything you've gone through. The pain, the delays, the confusion, it's all being used as part of your story. He's building a testimony that's going to inspire others. He's making sure that when the blessing shows up, it's not just good, it's better than anything you expected. Sometimes God hides the blessing until you're in position. Like a surprise gift, He doesn't want to reveal it until you're ready to receive it. That's why it feels like you're stuck or like nothing is moving. But what's actually happening is that the blessing is getting into place. The right people are being brought into your path. The finances are being prepared. The opportunity is being shaped to fit your destiny. And when everything aligns, it will come together so quickly you'll know it was only by the hand of God. This is where your faith comes in. Faith is believing without seeing. Faith says, even though I don't see it, I believe God is doing something. Faith stands firm when circumstances don't change. Faith holds on when others let go. Faith trusts the unseen hand of God, knowing that He's a good Father and He never forgets His children. Waiting is one of the hardest parts of life. You pray, you believe, you hope, and still nothing seems to be moving. It feels like heaven is silent and your situation is stuck. But one of the most powerful truths you can hold on to is this: delay is not denial. God's timing is perfect. Just because something hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't happen. God is not ignoring you. He's not withholding blessings to punish you. He's simply waiting for the appointed time, the right time, His time. And when God's time comes, no force in hell can stop what He has prepared for you. We live in a world of instant everything, instant messages, instant coffee, instant results. But God doesn't work on a microwave schedule. He works like a master craftsman, deliberately, intentionally, with patience and precision. He is more concerned about your development than your speed. Sometimes we want things now, but God knows we're not ready. And so He holds it back, not to hurt us, but to help us grow. His delays are actually divine setups. What feels like a setback is often a setup for something greater. Think about Joseph in the Bible. He had a dream from God as a teenager that one day he would lead, that people would bow before him. But that dream didn't come to pass the next day or the next year. Instead, he was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. It was delay after delay. But what looked like delay was really preparation. God was using every hardship, every disappointment, every moment of waiting to build Joseph's character, teach him leadership, and position him for greatness. And when the time was right, not a minute too soon or too late, Joseph was promoted from the prison to the palace in a single day. You see, when God delays something, it's because He's getting everything in order. He's not only preparing the blessing for you, He's preparing you for the blessing. That's why you can't force it. That's why you don't want to get ahead of God. If you try to rush the process, you may step into something that looks right but isn't ready. Timing is everything. A fruit picked too early may look good on the outside, but it won't taste right on the inside. The same is true with your destiny. When you wait on God's timing, the blessing will be complete. It will have joy, peace, and purpose. Sometimes we confuse silence with absence. We think that because we haven't heard anything from God, He must not be working. But God does some of His greatest work in silence. When you don't hear Him, trust Him. When the answer is delayed, keep walking in obedience. Keep praising Him in the hallway while you wait for the door to open. Your job is not to understand the when, it's to trust in the who. God is faithful. He never breaks His promises. What He said He will do. It just may not happen on your schedule. The problem with rushing things is that we often settle for less than God's best. We take matters into our own hands. We settle for relationships we weren't meant to be in. We accept jobs that are beneath our calling. We say yes to opportunities that God never authorized. But when you trust in God's timing, you won't have to chase what's yours. It will find you. It will fit you. It will bless you, not burden you. There's a reason the Bible says those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. Waiting isn't wasting, it's strengthening. In the waiting, your faith is stretched. Your trust deepens. Your character is refined. You learn to rely not on what you see, but on who God is. Waiting builds spiritual maturity. It teaches you to be still, to listen, to surrender. And those lessons are far more valuable than any quick breakthrough. God sees the end from the beginning. He knows every detail of your journey. He knows when to open the door, when to bring the right person, when to release the favor. What you think is a delay may actually be protection. He may be keeping you from something that looks good now, but would cause you pain later. He may be allowing you to grow in hiddenness so you can handle the weight of the blessing when it comes. He may be clearing the path ahead so you can walk through it with peace and confidence. Don't let the enemy lie to you in the waiting season. Don't let him whisper that it's never going to happen, that God has forgotten you, that your prayers are useless. The delay doesn't mean denial. It just means God is still writing the story. And when the time is right, everything will fall into place. What you couldn't make happen in your own strength will suddenly come together by the hand of God. There are moments in life when you feel like you're at the end of the road. You've tried everything. You've prayed every prayer. And you're exhausted mentally, emotionally, even spiritually. It feels like there's nothing left in you to keep going. But those are the exact moments when God steps in and does something unexpected. When you come to the end of your strength, that's when His power begins to work in a new way. You may not see how, you may not know when, but God is about to release something into your life that you didn't see coming, a blessing that will remind you He never stopped working. We often try to predict how God will move. We expect Him to work through a certain person, open a specific door, or answer our prayer in a familiar way. But God is not limited by our expectations. He specializes in the unexpected. He can use the least likely person to bless you. He can open a door that wasn't even on your radar. He can answer your prayer in a way that is bigger and better than anything you imagined. That's why it's so important to stay open, not just open to His promise, but open to His process. Because sometimes the way God brings the blessing doesn't make sense at first. In the Bible, there's a story about a man who had been paralyzed for 38 years. He lay near the pool of Bethesda waiting for a miracle. The belief was that when the water stirred, the first person would be healed. For years, this man waited, hoping someone would help him get in the water. But the healing didn't come the way he expected. One day, Jesus showed up not to take him to the pool, but to speak a word. Get up, He said, pick up your mat and walk. And instantly, the man was healed. The miracle didn't come through water, it came through the Word. That's the power of the unexpected. God didn't need to follow tradition. He didn't need the pool. He just needed a moment to release healing. That's how God works. When you least expect it, when you feel stuck, when everything looks the same, God shows up and turns things around. He doesn't need the economy to be perfect. He doesn't need your family to approve. He doesn't need you to have it all figured out. All He needs is your faith, your willingness to believe that He can do something new in your life. When you stay in a posture of expectation, even in the middle of hardship, you're inviting God to move in your situation. Unexpected blessings often come wrapped in uncomfortable situations. Sometimes the very thing you're complaining about is the thing God is using to bring the blessing. You're asking for more strength, and He's allowing resistance. You're asking for increase, and He's stretching your faith. You're asking for purpose, and He's letting certain doors close so you're forced to discover what's really inside you. Don't overlook the uncomfortable seasons. They often carry the greatest breakthroughs. What looks like loss may actually be positioning. What feels like rejection may be divine redirection. God sees what you can't see. He sees the people who are talking about you behind your back. The deals being made in secret, the obstacles being prepared against you. And just when the enemy thinks he has the upper hand, God releases a blessing that shuts every mouth, silences every doubt, and puts you in a place of favor. That's why you can't panic in the process. What seems like a breakdown is often the setup for a breakthrough. God doesn't need permission to bless you. He doesn't need the majority vote. He doesn't wait for conditions to be perfect. He just waits for the moment when everything aligns with His purpose for your life. You don't have to chase what's meant for you. You don't have to beg, manipulate, or stress about it. What God has for you will find you. It will knock on your door. It will show up in ways you didn't predict. But you've got to stay faithful in the waiting. You've got to keep showing up with integrity. Keep praying when it's quiet. Keep trusting when the evidence says otherwise. Because in one moment, God can shift everything. He can cause you to be seen by the right person, be remembered by the right person, be elevated to the place He's prepared for you all along. You may be thinking right now that nothing is happening, that the doors are closed, that people have overlooked you. But what if the delay is simply making room for the unexpected? What if God is holding back something small so He can release something greater? What if the disappointment was clearing the path for the right opportunity? What if the silence is preparing you to hear something you've never heard before? Keep your heart open, your spirit ready, because what God is about to do in your life won't follow your script. It will be His supernatural surprise. There are seasons in your life when it seems like you've been overlooked, passed by, or forgotten. You see others being blessed, others moving forward, others receiving breakthroughs, and you wonder when it will be your turn. You've been faithful, you've kept a good attitude, you've sown seeds in tears, and still the door hasn't opened. But what you may not realize is that while it looks like nothing is happening on the outside, God is working behind the scenes, lining up divine connections, preparing opportunities, setting the stage for an unexpected blessing that will launch you into your next season. What seems hidden is not forgotten, it's being developed. God has not ignored your faithfulness. He has not dismissed your prayers. In fact, He's heard every word, seen every sacrifice, and felt every moment you chose to trust Him over reacting to your circumstances. The delays are not denials, they are divine setups. Sometimes God doesn't let you see what He's doing, because if you saw the size of the blessing too early, you'd settle for something smaller. You'd try to figure it out your own way. But when He hides it, it's because He's protecting it. He's making sure it's matured, fully formed, and ready to be released at the right moment. Think about the story of Joseph in the Bible. God gave him a dream, but the path to that dream was filled with betrayal, false accusations, and time in prison. It looked like everything was working against him. Yet behind the scenes, God was orchestrating everything. The pit, the prison, even the people who hurt him, all of it was part of the process to get him to the palace. Joseph didn't have to promote himself. He didn't have to fight to be seen. When the time was right, God caused Pharaoh to have a dream. And Joseph was the only one who could interpret it. One moment he was a forgotten prisoner. The next, he was second in command of all Egypt. That's the power of what happens behind the scenes. God is a master planner. He is not in a rush, and He never wastes a single moment. You may feel like you're stuck in a place you've outgrown. You may be surrounded by people who don't see your value, but God sees it, and He's not going to leave you in that place forever. He's using the season to prepare you for what's next. He's building character in you. He's strengthening your faith. He's teaching you how to lean on Him when you can't see the way. And in the right time, He's going to bring you from the background to the forefront. There are blessings that are too big to be released before their time. If they came too soon, they could crush you instead of bless you. That's why God works in the shadows, because He's more interested in your longevity than your momentary comfort. He's not just blessing you for a day, He's setting you up for a legacy. The influence He's preparing for you, the platforms He's aligning, the people He's bringing into your life, none of it is random. It's all intentional. And when it unfolds, you'll look back and understand why it had to take time, why it had to happen the way it did, and why nothing was wasted. Sometimes we grow discouraged because we assume that silence means absence. But God does some of His greatest work in silence. A seed planted in the soil doesn't shout when it's growing. It pushes through the dirt quietly. It's hidden from sight, but the process is powerful. And just like that seed, you may be underground right now, but your roots are growing deep. Your foundation is being strengthened. And when you break through, it's going to be a testimony that brings glory to God and inspires others to keep believing. God hasn't forgotten about the prayers you prayed when no one else was around. He hasn't overlooked the nights you cried yourself to sleep or the days you chose to smile when you felt broken inside. Every tear, every prayer, every moment of faith is stored up, and at the right time it's going to produce a harvest. You don't need to chase it. You don't need to manipulate the process. You just need to stay faithful, stay expectant, and stay grounded in your identity in Christ. What God is preparing for you in private will be revealed in public. What you built in the dark will shine in the light. And the same God who saw you waiting will make sure everyone sees you rising. Sometimes the greatest blessings are the ones you didn't see coming. You were praying for something specific, believing for a breakthrough in one area, and then God surprised you with something even better. That's the beauty of unexpected blessings. They come wrapped in God's wisdom, not your expectations. When you live with open hands and an open heart, trusting God's plan above your own, you give Him room to exceed what you thought was possible. What you thought would take years can happen in a moment. What you thought was lost forever can be restored in ways you never imagined. You may have had your eyes fixed on one door, but God is about to open windows you didn't even know were there. You see, our human minds often try to predict how God will move. We look at our current circumstances and try to map out the most logical path to our breakthrough. But God isn't limited to logic. He's not restricted by time, space, or human reasoning. He doesn't have to use the people you think He'll use. He doesn't have to follow the timeline you created in your head. He can shift things overnight, cause people to favor you, bring opportunities to your doorstep, and give you blessings that make no sense in the natural. That's what makes them supernatural. That's what makes them a testimony. Think about the Israelites in the desert. They were expecting to get to the promised land in a straight line, but God took them through a wilderness. And in that dry, barren place, He gave them manna from heaven. They didn't even know what it was. That's why the word manna literally means, what is it? It was a blessing they didn't ask for in a form they didn't recognize during a season they didn't understand. But it sustained them. It was God saying, I'll provide for you in ways you can't predict. And He still does that today. You might be in a place right now where you don't understand what's going on. You thought you'd be further along. You thought certain doors would have opened by now. You feel like you're surrounded by uncertainty. But what if God is setting you up for something unexpected? What if what you think is a delay is actually divine positioning? What if the closed door is God's way of rerouting you to something better? Often it's in the moments when we surrender our expectations that God surprises us with His best. When you stop trying to figure everything out and start trusting that He's working all things together for your good. That's when you position yourself for miracles. God's unexpected blessings are not just about material things or outward success. Sometimes the blessing is peace that doesn't make sense, joy that bubbles up in the middle of heartbreak, strength when you should be falling apart. These are blessings too. They may not be the kind you can post about or show off to others, but they're powerful. They're life-changing. They're evidence that God is with you, even in the valley. And from that place, He will lift you. He will add to your life in ways you didn't plan, but will be grateful for forever. There's a blessing with your name on it, but it may not come the way you think. You might meet someone who becomes a divine connection and helps launch your dream. You might walk into a room and stumble into your next assignment. You might lose something and find out that it was only to make space for something greater. God doesn't bless according to your calendar. He blesses according to His purpose. And when your heart stays aligned with His, you'll realize that what He has for you is always worth the wait. Sometimes you have to let go of what you thought your life should look like to embrace the better version God has in store. You may have pictured a certain job, relationship, or outcome, but God knows the full picture. He sees the road ahead. He sees the dangers, the detours, and the divine appointments. When you release control and walk by faith, you begin to live with a holy expectancy. You stop stressing over details and start praising in advance. You don't know how or when, but you know who, and that's enough. The truth is, you're one encounter away, one phone call away, one divine connection away from everything changing. That's how suddenly God moves. And it's not about striving or performing. It's about resting in the truth that He's your provider, your source, your defender. He knows what you need before you even ask. So while you're praying for something specific, stay open to the unexpected. Stay grateful for the present moment. Stay positioned in faith. Because just when you think you've reached your limit, just when it looks like the doors are shut, God can send a blessing that makes you say, only God could have done that. There are times in life when everything feels like it's falling apart. Plans crumble, people walk away, doors close, and you're left wondering what's going on. But what if the breaking is a setup for the blessing? What if the delay, the detour, the disappointment is all part of God's divine strategy to prepare you for something greater than you can currently understand? You may feel like you're in a season of loss, but God is positioning you for gain. You may not see it yet, but behind the scenes, He is orchestrating events, shifting relationships, rearranging circumstances, and preparing hearts, all so He can release blessings at just the right time. When God releases a blessing, it often doesn't start with comfort. It starts with a shake-up. It begins with stretching your faith, taking you out of the familiar, and challenging your ability to trust. You can't stay in the same place and expect a new blessing. God will move you out of your comfort zone, not to harm you, but to elevate. Growth rarely feels good in the moment, but it's always worth it. The pruning feels like pain, but it's making room for new fruit. The silence feels like abandonment, but it's creating space for a deeper connection with Him. Sometimes He delays the blessing not because He's withholding, but because He's building strength in you to carry it. You see, if the blessing came too soon, you might misuse it, mishandle it, or even miss it. But when you've been through the fire, when you've walked through the valley and kept your praise, when you've cried out to God in the midnight hour and still believe, then you're ready. You're no longer asking just for something good, you're aligned with His will. And that alignment is where blessings flow. God doesn't just want to bless you. He wants the blessing to build you. He wants it to deepen your character, expand your faith, and reveal His glory through your life. Sometimes the blessing isn't just what you receive, it's who you become in the process. You might be waiting on a breakthrough, but God is more focused on what's happening inside you while you wait. Are you learning to be patient? Are you still serving faithfully? Are you still speaking life even when life feels unfair? That's where the real transformation happens. That's where God starts refining you, shaping your spirit, and preparing you not just to receive, but to sustain and multiply the blessing. And here's something powerful: the blessing God is preparing for you will not require you to compromise your integrity, lower your standards, or beg anyone to see your value. When it's from Him, it fits, it flows. It doesn't come through manipulation or fear, it comes through favor. People will wonder how it happened. They'll ask how you got that opportunity, how you stepped into that door, how your name came up in rooms you weren't even in. And your only explanation will be, God did it. That's the kind of blessing that silences doubt, that shuts the mouths of critics, and that reminds you who your source truly is. God doesn't just release blessings for convenience. He releases them for purpose. He knows what's tied to your life, who you're called to influence, and what legacy you're meant to leave. So when the blessing comes, it's not just for your comfort, it's for His kingdom. That's why it's worth the wait. That's why you can't settle for shortcuts. That's why you must keep walking in obedience even when the path doesn't make sense. Because what's coming is not random, it's intentional. It's designed specifically for you with your name on it, crafted to fit your journey, your gifts, and your calling. You might feel like you've been overlooked, but God sees every seed you've sown in faith. Every time you chose to do the right thing when it would have been easier to quit. Every time you encouraged others while silently needing encouragement yourself. That doesn't go unnoticed. The same God who sees in secret is the one who rewards openly. He will honor your faithfulness. He will reward your endurance. He will use every hardship, every heartbreak, and every closed door to elevate you into something you never thought possible. When God gets ready to bless you, it won't matter who tried to block you, who walked away, or who doubted you. His favor will override every obstacle. His power will make a way where there seems to be no way. You won't have to force it, fake it, or chase it. You'll simply walk into it, knowing that God orchestrated it all for your good. You'll begin to see how every delay was divine. Every rejection was redirection, and every battle was training ground for the blessing that was always on the way.